Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. We're joined by Graham Wilson, founder of Success Factory today, and we're going to talk about what makes a great project manager. Morning, Graham.
Good morning, Simon. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. You well?
I am really well, yeah. Looking forward to sharing my thoughts and ideas.
Been looking forward to this one. Should be good. So it'd be good for you to just tell us about how you landed where you are today. I think you've been 20 years plus at the Success Factory, and I know we met in 2005, but we'll come on to that in a second. So yeah, if you could share with how you got to where you are, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. So my first experience was I went straight from school and joined the military, and a career in the military initially. I guess when you're going through that career, you don't realise actually the development and training it's giving you around leadership, team working, and also projects. And always in the military, they're called different things like wars and skirmishes and things like that. But fundamentally, they are actually projects. A number of little skirmishes and battles will actually equate to very similar to a set of portfolio of projects within an organisation to deliver a set of benefits. So, without realising it, my first 9 years of career in the military was giving me a good grounding in really how to get the best out of people, how to deliver results, and how to do that in tough mission critical situations. So that was my first experience. And then I left the military and joined DuPont. And initially that was involved in running big engineering projects mainly in two sectors, really. One was the NHS and private medical sector in terms of installing X-ray equipment into hospitals, and also working in delivering projects for printing companies in pre-press. So the big newspapers and the Wapping and Maxwell and Murdoch and all that sort of stuff at the time. And that was really a good grounding in actually that transition into the corporate world, and with the difference that is in terms of managing key stakeholders and clients. And it was really fascinating, the different size organizations we're working with. So that gave me a good grounding there. And then I was really passionate around leadership, and I felt that looking at many organizations that they were what I'd call overmanaged and underled. And I felt, I feel like I can do something about this. I have good grounding in the military. A lot of people think military is all about command and control, when actually it's really about empowerment and mission command and those aspects. It's about empowering people on the ground to deliver results. So I thought, I can actually make an impact here. So 26 years ago now, I know that because my daughter's 26, so it was the same sort of time that she was born. I left the corporate market and took the risk and started my own business. And we started Success Factory really with this remit really around, how can we actually change organizations that are overmanaged and underled? How can we actually create leaders who can actually awaken possibility in people to deliver extraordinary results? And it went from there really. So, as you said, we met in 2005 and obviously in the retail sector. And I think we work with a whole range of different organizations, right from startups, a lot of entrepreneurial businesses, and going through fast growth and the challenge they have when they get to that critical point, that critical mass, about how they put structure, and not too much structure, but keep the culture that's made them successful. And then we work with the global players as well, working around the world, working with leaders. And it's great to be trusted to be able to develop, top leaders from organizations and actually help them to realize actually there is a better way to lead. The world's changed, and particularly at the moment, things are different. So when you think about leadership and running projects and making change happen, it's contextual, it's situational. So we need people who can actually craft solutions. So that's really my journey. So the last 26 years working with a whole range of different organizations in different sectors and actually helping them to really have a better impact from a leadership point of view.
Published author of 2 books, Leadership Laid Bare and the New Leadership Manifesto.
That the first one, Leadership Laid Bare, came about from a challenge. So I'm a big fan of simplicity. I believe, certainly in the project arena, we try and make it too complicated, and we tie down delivery of stuff in terms of complexity and make it far too complicated. So I'm a big fan of one-page plans. So I really believe any project or change should be able to summarize it on one page. And we were doing some work with a strategy with a global organization, and the CEO challenged me, said, okay, I get the idea about these one-page plans, Graham. It's been great working with you, and we've articulated our 80-page strategic plan into one page, which has been really fantastic. So thank you for that. But give me leadership on a page. And this was about 7 years ago now. And I have to be honest, having taught leadership for a long time, I suddenly struggled to actually articulate it in a very concise way. So that really led me on the track to distill it down to what I now call the 10 disciplines. And look at what is it leaders need to do now and in the future to be successful, and decode it and make it really simple. And that's really what formed the foundation of saying, well, now I've got it on one page and I've got it down to 10 key disciplines. That's where the book came from. So the book really talks about why we need to change the way we lead. What does great leadership look like? What are the great leaders in the world doing right now? Not just what I call the hero leaders, but the leaders that people don't know about in businesses that day in, day out, they're delivering great stuff. What is it they're actually doing to be successful? How do you then develop as a leader? And then what tools and techniques do you need to be successful? And that's really where the book came from. And the New Leadership Manifesto then came from. So give me a book I can read in about 30 minutes. I was actually inspired by Ed Sheeran and a lady called Amy Wadge, who wrote Thinking Out Loud in 20 minutes, I think it was. And I thought, I wonder if you could write a book in 20 minutes. You can't. Well, I can't anyway. The book really is about 45 minutes, the New Leadership Manifesto, of a summary of the 10 disciplines. So if you want the short version, it's the New Leadership Manifesto. It doesn't tell you the how bit. The leadership babe will tell you the why, the what, and the how. And that's where the two books came from. It's really great to be able to decode what great leadership was. And writing a book gives you some really good rigor to then be able to articulate it. And then a lot of the new world curriculum that we deliver in organizations is based on those concepts.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for anybody who's written a book, and you've got two. So we will reference those when we publish this in the blurb about the podcast, so people can check those out.
It's interesting, so, linking it to project management. I actually set it up as a project. It was really great to think, okay, so why am I actually doing this book? What's the purpose of the book? And then scoping it out, and then thinking about where I'm going to get all the data from, and then crafting the approach, and then delivering it. So it was like a mini project, really. So you can use these techniques in all sorts of your ways of life, can't you? In delivering stuff.
Did you get it on one page?
Yes, yeah. So I've got a one-page leadership manifesto. You're happy? It's on the website. You can download that. It's free. A lot of the content I believe now is I like to give my content away, because it's not about the content really for me. It's about how you apply the content. So where we come in really is helping people to understand how do we connect to the content and how do we actually make it happen for real in organizations. Same with project management. I still find it amazing where people are paying for project management methodologies when it's all out there anyway. What we need to do is work out how do we actually use it and what skills we need to actually make it happen in the workplace.
I think it's just nicely to talk about kind of the future world. So lots of buzzwords about pivoting being one, innovation, all those key things that people are starting to or have done in this strange time that we're heading out of. And there's probably going to be a real focus on organisations to deliver projects, maybe not the ones that they thought they were going to deliver, maybe focusing on different things, and they need people to do it. Most organisations take great store managers, hotel managers, because it's their next development step or almost outside of that, so either into a field role or a central role. Take them out of their existing environment, bit of a steer, this is your boss, this is your boss's boss, these are some people that might be important, go deliver. And then I think wonder why maybe at times it doesn't go particularly well. This links us actually to how we met. So in 2005, I went through that journey, development route for you. You've managed some big stores in DIY, come work in an office, roll out the scheduling project that you've been part of the working group. Here's a couple of £1 million. You kind of know what you're doing. Off you go. And it was like, oh, this is a bit different. I don't really know how this works. And there's a lot of politics at play here. And I'm going to have to upset some people, but actually I don't know which ones I'm going to need to upset. I don't know how to do that, if I should do that. And that first 5-6 weeks was all about just working out the lay of the land. Who are the people that can get you the stuff that you need to do? How do you get in people's diaries when they don't know who you are, or your project's just another one of the 15 projects they sit on? And I learned quite quickly secretaries are really important in that role. Always make friends with the secretaries.
Definitely, yeah.
So it brings us to the question, does a line manager, store manager, hotel manager, office manager, whatever it may be, make a good project manager?
Great question.
I think I did all right. I think I did all right. I think in hindsight I could have done a lot better. When we had a couple of sessions with you guys, it brought, in my mind, lots of things together. So all the chaos, the change curve, all those bits that we kind of knew about, but nobody had taken the time to sit us down, how to build a project plan, what stakeholder is, what a milestone is. Sounds simple, but running a store, never had to think about any of those things.
Yeah, does a great land manager make a great project manager? I think they can, and you certainly have, which is fantastic. And I think for me, as you mentioned there, the difference, and you're taking someone out of one context and putting them into another context and expect them to fly straight away. And I see that across the board. Obviously, we met in retail, but it happens in every organization where they'll go, okay, yeah, you've been really great at hitting all your KPIs. You're fantastic at running your store. So let's give you some development and put you into a project role and deliver some major benefits to the organization. The challenge you have, of course, is line management is completely different to project management. In line management, you're in an environment that's already set up for you. You walk in as a store manager and you've got that positional power. You've got the environment set up, the processes, the ways of working, your operating model are all there. It's actually a matter of actually then making that happen and inspiring the guys on the ground and making it really happen and delivering processes you require to deliver outstanding customer service. When you then become a project manager, and I can remember you sort of making that transition, is suddenly you're ripped out of that environment that's set up for you into an environment that you now have to set up yourself. As a line manager, you've got people reporting directly to you. So not only do you have positional power, you have that reward power. And it's very easy to walk into a meeting and get things done because people listen. And in a project management environment, you have to use a different type of power and different type of influencing skills. And I can always remember going to one client and saying, Graham, we need some project management training, and can you deliver stuff around planning and milestones and all this project management speak sort of stuff and critical path analysis, all that sort of stuff. And when I start to talk to the project managers in there, it's actually they're pretty good at planning. Yeah, they're pretty good at doing all that stuff. What they struggle with was the stakeholder management, as you mentioned there, the politics, the influencing, and the persuading bit, because you're now having to work where you don't have people reporting to you. You're now having to go to people who are already busy doing other stuff and having to then influence them to actually help you on your project without that control that you had as a store manager. So I think, yes, they can if they make that realization is that I need to change my way of leading because it's different. I'm in a different context. It's a bit like if you said, let's think, if I go back to my military days and if you took the first Iraqi war and you think about the American general Stormy Norman that ran that, and if you took Stormy Norman out of that environment and got him to run Virgin, for example, and put Richard Branson running Iraq, it probably wouldn't have worked as well as it did because the context and situation is different. So I think that's the first point. I think the second point is organizations are, I think I mentioned this already, are notorious about making project management a black art. It's almost like you have to have these subject matter experts, and it's these people who talk about in a different language who actually deliver stuff in a magical way. And they don't have a framework or a guide to actually guide people through a project life cycle. And it becomes very difficult because there are lots of different project methodology out there, and it gets very confusing. So you've got things like Prince2, for example, that organizations will use. You'll have things like user-centered design or human-centered design. You'll have waterfall, you'll have agile, and all these are different methodologies that start to get very confusing unless you understand how to actually decide what methodology you're actually going to use in a situation. So a lot of the work we've done with big organizations is to take what they've got and actually create a simplistic framework that guides people through. So when you make that transition to a project manager, you've got a guide, you've got a framework. It's not a restrictive framework. It's really a set of questions that guides you through the setting up of a project, because a lot of so-called project managements in big organizations are not really a project manager. They're actually a deliverer of someone else's plan, and they have no idea of all the stuff that happens up front. What we do is we tell people to run the full life cycle, right from understanding to scoping to creating your project team to then crafting your approach and then delivering, and then obviously embedding it and making a new normal. I think there's two things there. One is it's a different situation, so your leadership skills have to change. And the second thing is the complexity that organizations put in place in running projects and the bureaucracy and the challenge that you actually have to actually get things through. A lot of organizations, when we start working with them, they say things like, it's like walking through treacle here, trying to get a decision made, or I can't get this signed off, or I've got to go through filling out 45 million different templates just to get this bit of project done. It's an absolute nightmare. I need to operate quickly. We want things done quickly, but we can't do it. So they're probably the key factors. So I think if you can understand that you need a different type of leadership, and we're happy to talk about what that looks like. And the second thing is if you have a really good methodology that is very adaptable and will actually guide you through step by step what you need to do in a more effective way. Some of the projects that I'm seeing people doing now, particularly at the moment, are what I call foggy projects, where you need to change, you know what you've got is not working, but you're not really sure what the problem is yet, and you don't know what the solution is. So a traditional project management methodology is not going to work in that situation there. So how do you deal with that situation where it's very ambiguous and uncertain? So that's where more of an agile approach will start to work. And so I think having these tools in your toolbox and actually then being able to adapt your approach and craft the right approach for the situation you're in will actually help you become a great project manager. And you probably found yourself, Simon, haven't you, that it's a journey. You start off with, wow, this is different, to now worked out how to manage stakeholders. You made a good point there about getting to know people's secretaries. One of the things I've always challenged project managers when they make that leap into running projects in organizations is you need to know the strategy of the business as well as the leadership team. And you need to know who owns different parts of the strategy. Because if you know what the strategy is, and you know what your project is, and you know how your project links to the strategy, and then you know who owns that part of the strategy and who's dependent on those KPIs being hit, then suddenly you've got a really good influencing platform to be able to then base your project and the people you need to get on board to actually deliver it in an effective way. So I'd probably say that there's two things. I think, yes, definitely, if they make that realization and they get the right development.
Yeah, it provoked a few memories in my mind as you were speaking. There was a couple of bits that are really clear and vivid. There's that realization that if I'm a full-time project manager on that project, probably everybody else involved isn't full-time on it, and it's not their day. They've got a day job, should I say, and you're extra work in that. So it is back to that leadership skills. There was a couple of other things that I probably fell foul of quite early and learned some hard lessons. One was around managing bad news.
Yeah.
So from the environment I came out of, if there was any bad news, you could contain it in the four walls, or you had an escalation process to HR, regional manager, whatever it might be, facilities. All of a sudden, I've got a project plan and it's gone off track because the people that are dealing with the IT have let us down, or the equipment's not arrived. Stuff that's outside of my control. And delivering that news to a senior team, which are people that I probably saw once a year in my store. If it was good, if it was bad, you'd see them a lot because they'd come back and check. So you're working at a level 2 or 3. You're working with a team of people 2 or 3, 4 levels above where you would normally interact. So there's some pressure with that. And, if I do it wrong, is this the end of my career type stuff? But all of a sudden, you've got to tell them, I know I promised it for here. These are some things that haven't gone to plan. Here's some things that mitigate that. And these are the reasons why. What do you think? And the amount of times I saw, because there was a couple of other projects running in parallel with mine, the project managers would know the lay of the land intrinsically. The amount of time these things went to the senior team and it got filtered down, or the message slightly blurred. That in hindsight, there was a couple of moments when, if we'd have probably been braver and more honest, and it was probably too early in our journey and too early in the project, and nobody senior probably wanted to know that because they'd all hung their hats on it. So that was a lesson for me of...
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things there. One is, for me, when you were talking there, was about the culture of the organisation. I think one of the things I realised when I started running projects in the corporate world is that I suddenly realised actually that a lot of the senior teams, and this is obviously a general statement, is they're brilliant line managers, and they've got to where they are because they're brilliant line managers. And the assumption I made is they understand projects, they understand programs, they understand projects and how you deliver stuff. But actually, the realization is they're fantastic line managers. And for example, is insisting on an end-to-end detailed project plan when it's really, really foggy. And I see a lot of that in things like, going down the omni-channel route all those years ago in retail and digitizing what we do. There's a lot of unknowns. So all of a sudden things like, a go live date becomes set in stone. And actually the go live, it's not a time-based project. It's a right first time project. So there's a lot of thinking, of all world thinking that we have to, as a project manager, we have to educate senior people. So it's around, how do I influence them when they're supposed to be the subject matter experts and know everything, and they don't. So how do I do that in a powerful way that gets them on board? But also, how do I then really make sure that I'm not overcommitting? I see all the time where people say, well, I need to know how much you're going to spend, what the scope's going to be, what the end-to-end project lifecycle is, what the milestones are. And as project managers, then we actually then commit to that, don't we? We commit to this project plan and we know it's going to change. And we then get beholden to that and say, well, why has that changed? Well, you forced us to actually do this end-to-end project plan when actually all we could really do was plan the first stage. And I think there's an education there. We do a lot of work with how you sponsor a project. And I think a lot of senior teams, again, the very general statement is they don't realize actually that the sponsor actually owns a project. The project manager is there to deliver it for the sponsor. And the sponsor is responsible for the delivery of the benefits. And the classic statement, isn't it? If it goes well, it was down to the sponsor. If it goes badly, it was a project manager. I think we probably all fell foul of that at some stage in our career. But you're right, though, isn't it? You're committing yourself to a plan that is going to change. So it's about how do I head that off early on? And the thing I find is the setup of the projects in the first place is the thing that normally goes wrong. There's not a deep understanding about why we're doing the project. Is it really desirable? What's the case for change? How does that fit to our strategy? Does it really help us to achieve that? Is the change feasible and viable? Have we got technology partners who are credible in this area, or are we going down a route where this has never been done before, so it's quite risky? So that whole desirability, feasibility, and viability up the front is really, really important. And then once you've got that in place, and it's okay, I think it's definitely desirable, it's feasible, and it's viable. Then you need to then spend time putting a team together, and I think that's where it goes wrong. And one of the things I created a framework called Change Pro, which is really linking change leadership and change management with project management. And typically what happens is the project manager is installed as the subject matter expert to manage the technical solution to the problem, whatever it is, process, new technology, whatever it is, new customer journey, whatever it is, the technical solution. And then the change is left to someone else. And when I say change, I mean getting the business to want the change. So if we're in retail, for example, if we're doing a new store format, for example, I've got to get the store manager, the regional manager, the divisional manager on board to really work with me to accept this new store that I'm going to deliver for them. I can't just rock up on a Monday morning and start ripping things out and start changing it without getting them on board. So that whole change piece and project management, I see it happen a lot, mainly in large organizations where you've got the HRE sort of type people doing the change stuff, and you've got the technical people doing the project stuff. And really, it should be on one plan. It should be one team. And for me, I always challenge project managers when I'm working and saying to them, where's your change plan? Where are you building that awareness and desire for the business to actually want this change? How are you actually going to educate them? How are you going to develop them? How are you going to make sure that they're going to support you to really drive that change? And I think that's another challenge I see there. So one is the level of thinking at a senior level is probably not as good as it could be from a project delivery point of view. And a lot of senior teams don't realize actually that the way you deliver a strategy is through making change happen. So if you're having to have a transformational strategy in place, then you need to be really capable at delivering change and projects. And you mentioned before about innovation. Innovation for me is around how you develop really great ideas and then how you actually land them in the business to add value. So from a retail point of view, it's about, how do we add more value to our customers and reduce our cost at the same time? That's a key element really about making it all work.
The other thing that you mentioned earlier was about methodologies, and then you kind of turn that into a framework. That's one of the things that I learned very, very quickly was somebody can give you a Prince 2 book or say this is the methodology we use. Certainly within a retail environment, that should be used as, in my experience as a framework, because if you try and follow that to the letter, you will never achieve anything. It
totally agree.
Ties you up in milestones and reviews, and there's a point of we've got to get some stuff done. So that the overarching theory and framework is brilliant to give you some structure, but implementing that to the letter would just slow it down to a degree that you grind to a halt.
I think the structure and process is the easy bit, isn't it? They call that the hard side of projects, but I think that's the easy bit. It's the people bit, isn't it? It's the influencing, the teamwork, in stakeholder management, the marketing, all that stuff, which is new to people. And I can take someone who's never done a project in their life before, put them through a five-day Prince2 project, practitioner course, and at the end of it, they become a Prince2 practitioner. They've never delivered a project in their life, but they know the process, and that's only a tiny little bit of it. And I think I would say is that 80-20, isn't it? 20% is the methodology you use, and the 80% is the culture, the people side of it, really. And that's really the biggest. Going back to your first question, really, we run a session called a Project Leader Workout, and it's really about looking at 6 key skill areas. So the first one, of course, is you as a leader, and as a project manager, it's really down to how well you build your team around you. So you can't deliver the project yourself. It's about building a great team. I did some coaching for a fantastic project manager a while ago who suddenly started to become unstuck and not delivering. And what happened is he'd started off with smaller projects and then got bigger and bigger and bigger until he got this massive project that suddenly became a catastrophe for him, really. So his boss was saying to him, can you give him some coaching? He's a great project manager, something's going wrong. What's happening? And what I found out really is that on the smaller projects, he's a great person, fantastic person, but he was doing the work himself, and he got away with it in the smaller projects. And it suddenly got to this point of critical mass where there's no way he could actually manage this and do it himself. So what was happening? He was keeping himself so busy trying to do the stuff that he shouldn't be doing. He didn't have then time to go and do the stakeholder management stuff, or speak to the senior team, or go and talk to the users and things like that. So the project was just going downhill. So I think for me, there's 6 areas. One is leadership, and that's for about going down to the basics about how you make a positive impact. It's about being you. It's about being collaborative, and it's about how you make an impact as a leader. And then there's a whole team building bit about how you build high performance teams really quickly. And I think a lot of project managers, when they move into projects, it goes straight into delivery. And rather than thinking, actually, I need to build a team first. Let's build the relationships first, build a team, get that in place, get the key stakeholders on board, and then we'll start to deliver. So managing that stakeholder anxiety gap is really important. And then, of course, you've still got the whole project management stuff of planning, coordinating, quality, risk, governance, change, and all the reporting sort of stuff that goes with it, the sort of hard side. And another aspect as well is around your ability to be able to keep the momentum going around learning and reviewing. And I see it all the time where at the end of a project, people will do a PIR sort of process where what was that project we did? What did we learn from it? And they in retrospective, they're trying to learn the sort of the last year or so, all the key learning points, rather than actually being an ongoing process around learning, reviewing, and building the team and delivering stuff in that way. And then the key aspect, of course, and you mentioned that earlier on, is this whole thing around the politics area around stakeholder management. And that's really about, the first thing is, how do I identify who they are in the first place? That's probably the biggest challenge, isn't it? Who are my stakeholders? And who are the ones I need to really get on board? Who's got the power? Who's got the influence? Who are the people who are things like the question I always ask myself is who wants me to fail? who's betting on me to fail? So how do I get them on board? Once I know who they are, then how do I engage them? How do I really work with them to get them to want to help and support this project? And as you mentioned before, they're already busy. They've already got KPIs and tasks and stuff they're doing already. So they're already working at 100% doing other stuff. I now need to get some of their time to work on my project. So how do I engage them? And then how do I manage them on a day-to-day basis? But the last bit then, the sixth area really, which is something which is really important, which we tend not to do, is building your marketing skills. How do I actively build the project brand, my project leader brand, share successes, but still remain humble? I think that's a key element as well.
Yeah, and there's some random stuff. I remember we had to do 2 conferences, and again, all of a sudden you're being asked to stand up in front of your what were your peers, well, still are to a
Yeah.
degree. And we had one year we had to dress up as chefs, and the other year we had to dress up for Did I'm a Celebrity was the theme, because it was in its kind of first or second year. And that's all stuff which is way, way outside of any comfort zone that you've ever thought about. So there's a whole bunch of stuff you don't think about. The stakeholder management one, for me, was key, and probably still is in the project work we do. I certainly found in the early days, like you say, there was true stakeholders, as in they're part of this and they own this, and there was almost pseudo stakeholders who had a really strong opinion and were very influential that actually had nothing to do with it, but did or didn't buy in. I found quite quickly a great way to get them involved was, because we were a retail organisation, was to kind of say, okay, let me know when you're out visiting stores, and if you don't mind, I'll come along for the day. And at that time in the car, where you're just having a chat about, you know, how are your kids and what do you do, and you know, where did you start? Builds that personal rapport, which then, as the day goes on, by the end of the day, you're in hopefully a good place if you've got a real understanding of their interests in it, what they think is good, what they think the risks are. But also then you've got that rapport that when you do need to just go and have one of those turn up at the desk conversations of, hi, how you doing? I could do with a bit of support. You've got that personal level. And I found that was probably the best way for me of doing it, of going into their world and seeing what interested them. And they may have been in IT, loss prevention. I learned some stuff, but actually it was a brilliant way of connecting for a day.
Absolutely, yeah. That whole empathy isn't really about seeing it through their eyes and things that are struggling them. You know, I call it the pains and gains. So what's the emotional drivers for them, and how are they seeing a project? And what are their hopes and fears, if you like, in terms of the project? Because there are a lot of projects on there what you get involved in, which are cross-functional projects that are going to impact on people. And I can remember, you know, things like a new process going in that's going to really impact on the supply chain. And we're looking at this project plan and thinking, when were the supply chain guys involved in this? Because this is being done to them rather than with them. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a disaster. It's just going to be a car crash, because they're just going to resist this. So we had to very quickly then sort of backtrack and, as you rightly said, you know, build those relationships. And I always talk about avoiding what I call the dead body syndrome, which is most project people are so focused on the tasks and deliverables, which is obviously important to deliver, but the way we do that is through our people. So you've got to build those relationships. You've got to build the relationships with your team. But you've also, and the way you describe that is perfect, is you've got to build a relationship with the stakeholders. And you've got to have that, you know, that humility, haven't you, to go in there and just ask the question and listen, and, you know, absorb what they're saying and their concerns and their worries and their hopes and their aspirations, and then start to feed that into your project plans. But going back to retail, you know, changing the stores in retail is that if you don't get the store team on board, all they're going to do when you arrive with your project team is they're going to make it difficult for you. So it's going to make the project really difficult to deliver in the timescale. You get them on board, they're going to help you and support you. So absolutely right there, definitely. The whole cultural relationship is key.
We more and more get involved where projects have got IT, and there's a bit of one of those big red revolving lights that goes off in my head when it's really a change project, but it's IT led. And that's no disrespect to those IT people, but it becomes very much about what solution are we going to use, what are the features, what are the functions, how are we going to test it, how are we going to deploy it, how are we going to cut over all those bits. And you sit there and think, but somebody at the other end's got to press the buttons and they're not in the room. And that's back to, you know, store layout's another example of, you go with the plan, this is what we're going to do to your store. Why would you put that there? Because that doesn't make sense. Oh, it's signed off now. All right. So now I've got kind of lighting next to plumbing. Well, that's really not logical. I'd have light bulbs next to lighting. And it's the same in any other organisation. Those golden nuggets and pearls of wisdom are always there. It's how you engage and ask them.
I think people get sort of like caught up into trying to deliver things really, really quickly and being really effective, when actually you can speed up by slowing down and just take the time to go out and visit the stakeholders, go and do the visit with them, build the relationships. And there's these golden nuggets, aren't there? These golden nuggets you find out, you're thinking, oh my God, I didn't know that I need to put that into the project plan. And they're key, and you can't do that if you're rushing around. So that whole concept of, you can really speed up delivery by just slowing down a little bit and really thinking it through, getting the right people on board, listening to what they say, work in a collaborative way. People don't like being done to, do they? They want to be done with. So how do I actually build them into it? How do I build that awareness and desire and that sort of support from them to actually really make it happen? That's where all the change piece comes in. I always think any project should start with a change piece. Most projects I see, the change piece happens after you've gone live. And I'm now trying to manage the resistance when it should actually be the other way around. We should start with the change, get the business really excited about the change and wanting the change, so that when we then deliver the solution, it really works. And you're right about the alarm bell, and I know it's a very general statement, but I have exactly the same. When I see a customer team-based project that's been led by IT, I just don't think that's right. It's got to be led by the business. It's a business solution. IT are a supplier of a solution, not the control of it. So it's got to be owned, hasn't it, by the business. I totally agree with that.
The other thing, and I know we're moving around, it's all on the same topic, so that's good. I learned as well that sometimes you will never get everybody on board. There's always going to be, for whatever reason, history, whatever it might be, politics has been a word we've used quite a lot in this podcast.
Yeah,
people that don't want to be on board, and some of that is absolutely outside your control. And again, I learned you've got to listen to those people because their opinions and voice is valid, but you can't please all. It's a classic saying, you can't please all the people all the time. So you've got to be straight with them and say, I really appreciate your feedback. This is the stuff we can influence. This is stuff we can't. But actually, this is still coming, so we can't avoid it.
Yeah.
And that's difficult.
And that's the leadership skill, isn't it? When you have that connection with that person, you built that relationship with that person. I think what I found is that people tend to get resistant is when they're not included. I think inclusion equals commitment in my mind. So the earlier I include people, the easier it is then to actually get them on board. And actually you have to sometimes re-educate them. People don't change their mind unless they change their mindset. So if they're stuck in their ways, then it might have been successful in the past, but the world's changed. So I have to spend my time educating people to get them on board, to understand actually there is a different way of doing it. And I think if you're a busy project manager trying to rush around and deliver things, then you haven't got time to do that sort of stuff. That's where it can become difficult. If you mentioned there about going out and having the time to go and speak to the stakeholders and go and spend time with them and sit in the car with them and drive around with them, do the store visits. If you're really busy doing stuff, then you haven't got time to do that. And that's a mistake, isn't it? You've got to spend that time. That's what the sort of things that you need to be doing to make it happen. But you're right. There are going to be situations where people won't agree with you, but you've got to then step up, haven't you? And say, okay, well, that's great. This is the decision. This is what we're doing, and drive it forward.
And I think even if they still don't agree, they appreciate you've taken the time to listen, talk to them, and been straight with them sorry, but it is what it is. There's some stuff that just greater powers happen. So I think you've come up with the 6 key bits that really define a great project manager. Some good reference points. We've talked a lot about leadership, about negotiating, about influencing frameworks, and how you prioritize your time. I suppose it comes down to where you identify that time well spent building relationships is actually going to pay dividends further downstream and help you with some of those fog projects and training through treacle to get things done.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
In today's world, then, as we think about, there's going to be lots of new tech, new initiatives because of health and safety, cleanliness is going to be more important. Managing queues is going to be different. What does effective project management look like in probably tomorrow's world?
Wow, it's a massive question. I think first step is we've got to simplify it. We've got to step back and go, what is it we're trying to do here? I think you can run a project on 6 questions. So my 6 questions are: first one is, number 1 is the change desirable? So having debate around what is it we're doing here, why are we doing it, is really important. Is the change feasible and viable? So, can we do it? Have we got the technology resources to actually make it happen now? And actually, will it save us money or make us money? And so, is it viable? Next question then would be is who's driving the change, who's delivering it, and who's implementing it? So I think there's a good set of questions around the team element there. And the next bit is what's the best approach? What's the what's the project and change plan? So what methodologies are we going to use? Are we going to use one method, or are we going to use a combination of, it might start off in an agile way and then move into a design thinking stage, and then into a delivery stage, a step-by-step approach, paint by numbers approach. So what's the best approach we're going to take? How are we going to land the change? So that's the actual delivery stage of it. How do you actually make it happen in the business? And the final then is about how we make the new normal. So I think if we can move away from the complexity, the bureaucracy, the desire for end-to-end project plans, the lack of trust, I guess, in senior teams, and actually start to operate in a more collaborative way and ask questions in an effective way to then drive the thinking. And I think that for me is what project management is going to be like in the future. We're going to have to deal with a lot of uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So we can't have these, cookie cutter, step by step. You fill out that template, do this template, fill out that, get that signed off, and do this. I just don't think that's going to work anymore. We need leaders, and probably move away from having a project manager to a project leader. So someone who can actually create this environment, ask the right questions, collaborate effectively, really lead people, get people inspired about it, get people on board, and deliver it that way. On the back of that, we still need all the traditional project management skills, but it is going to be different. So I think that's probably the first step. And then having this ability to craft solutions. So one of the mistakes, I'll go back a few steps, one of the mistakes I see organizations doing is that someone from IT goes away on an agile project management course and comes back and is very influential in the business and says, every project we now run in an organization should be agile. Or they go away and they do some stuff around human-centered design techniques or design thinking. They come back and we then run every project in that way. And I think what we need to do is move away from that and actually think about what's the best approach for the situation. So rather than just doing, we're actually balancing that thinking and doing, spending more time in the setup, the understanding, the scoping, and the team stage before we get into delivery. So I think that's probably the major changes I would see. And then educating senior teams to really move away from the obsessive reporting and all the sort of detailed information and meetings they have and the control they put in, and loosen off the governance a little bit. Still have it in a quality and an assurance point of view, still have that in place, but allow project leaders to deliver in a way that's effective. So that whole management by exception. Spend the time setting it up, get clarity, and then really empower them to get on. And one of the things when I'm talking with sponsors, and one of the realizations is that they don't realize that their role is to ensure that the project manager or project leader is successful, and their job is to remove any roadblocks or difficulties they have. I think a lot of senior people see their job as to manage the project manager, and it becomes over complicated. I know project managers, for example, will spend all Monday writing a plan about what they're going to do that week, and on Friday have to write a report on what they've done that week. So in essence, they've only got 3 days of work really, and I think that's just crazy. So I think that whole empowerment piece, and so there's a big change from a leadership point of view for them to get comfortable with ambiguity, comfortable with people delivering things, but still keep control, but have that direction, autonomy, and support. So probably the key things I would say going forward.
I love those bits of advice, and the two that resonate with me are, one, the reporting. I've been there, done that. Flash reports, updates, daily updates, weekly updates, Monday updates, board updates. You can spend your life, if you're not careful, writing reports. And I think
what value is that really adding?
Yeah, exactly. Other than you kind of trying to make it look like you've done something other than writing reports. And I think that key bit of stakeholders understanding that they're not managing the project manager, they're managing the project manager to be successful. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means that there comes a point when that project isn't going to work. So it's being brave, because a successful project for me is delivering it or understanding at a relatively early point this isn't going to work and killing it.
Absolutely.
I think we all see those projects that are meandering because nobody's quite brave enough, or everybody's got too much skin in the game to say it's not really going to work.
Absolutely.
So that whole yeah, it's brilliant. We're on the right tracks. Here's some steers and some thoughts to get it to where it needs to be. We're actually saying, look, what everything's telling us, instinct, data, costs, this isn't going to work. We've got to pull it. That I don't see a lot of that. I see lots of, well, we're kind of that far in, we'll just get to the end and it's kind of going to peter out. So I think there's still bits around.
Yeah. The old world, isn't it, is what's your project plan? Okay, I'm going to sign that off and I'm going to baseline this project. So you're going to deliver this amount of stuff in that time for that amount of money, and then we'll measure you on what you've done along that life cycle. You could do that in the old world because the pace of change was so slow, and you're expert at retailing or whatever you do, so you can actually plan in detail. So I think those days have gone, and we need to get comfortable. As you said, there is that we are going to fail, and how many projects do we see that we know it should be stopped, but we spent like 4 or 5 million or whatever, so we've got to carry on. Because no one's brave enough to say, well, actually, we spent 4 or 5 million. It hasn't worked. Let's stop it. Let's kill it. And I think that's where the leadership comes in, really, where that realization is that it's okay for a project to fail as long as we know what the reason is and we learn from it. And if the setup's done right, then this is a project that we're going to test. We're going to try out. Right from the start, we might know this is going to fail, but that's okay. It's a bit like elite sport, isn't it? To become an elite sports team or elite sports, you've got to push the boundaries. And I think in many bureaucratic organizations and old world organizations is that we're killing that innovation because people are afraid of actually failing. I call them watermelon projects. So watermelon projects, the big watermelons, which are lovely and green on the outside, but when you cut it in half, it's really red on the inside. And how many projects do we know that are held up in esteem and going, this was a really successful project? And it was really successful because it was delivered on time for the right budget, and the right scope and all that stuff. But actually, it made no difference. It made no benefit difference. So it didn't improve anything. It didn't save us money. It didn't make us more money. But it was a successful project because it was delivered on time to the right scope. And I think that's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah, it comes back to some of that stuff of if it's successful, the stakeholder takes it. If it's not, the project manager takes the cake. If you try 10 dark times drive innovations, pandemics, world wars, all those points, if you try 10 things for work and then you've done it in an agile way or a way that accelerates, 6 don't, but you learn from those 6 and the next 10, 6 work and 4 don't, that's progress. And you've still landed 10 out of 20 things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously you've not landed, so you've got a 50% hit rate and a 50% kill rate. But actually, if it's about learning and growth and innovation, that's part of that process.
Yeah, and that's a big education piece, isn't it? And I think the situation we're in now is probably people talk about pivoting, and it's amazing. It's amazing how suddenly, for example. The IT project the government must have run to actually pay the furlough sort of scheme. They delivered that in a few weeks. That would have taken years, wouldn't it, normally, to deliver? It can be done, can't it?
Yeah, people have spun up home delivery in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's been on their too hard to do list for 8 years. So innovation drives change. And some of it won't work. There'll be some hiccups along the way with that and some scenarios that nobody's ever thought about. But actually 80% of it's done. So Graham, it's been I would say emotional actually because it's brought back some memories of a while ago and some maybe not so good stuff. But listen, it's been great to chat. I think there's some amazing advice in there. If people want to find out more about Success Factory U, get in touch. We will link your LinkedIn profile when we publish a pod. What's the website for reference?
So the corporate website is thesuccessfactory.co.uk. Or my personal website is grahamwilson.com. I'm on YouTube and LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, so it'd be great to link in with people who want to explore it more. And if you want to find out more about Change Pro, then just go on to changepro.co.uk, and there's tons of free stuff on there.
Good.
It's been a pleasure. It's been good. We could talk about it forever. It's all good.
I know. Final question before you go, which is one for everybody on the podcast. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
I always find those questions really difficult because there's tons of stuff that have been really useful. But for me, I think is about being yourself about being you. I think as a leader, the more you are present, the more you are yourselves, the more impact you're going to have. So I think, I certainly spent my early years trying to be someone I wasn't, and that just takes energy. Whereas when you start to be yourself and play to your strengths, and suddenly you realize actually you can't be brilliant at everything. If you outsource the stuff that you can't do to other people who are good at it, and do the stuff that you're good at. And as soon as you start playing to strengths and start being yourself, that's when it really happens. And being really clear about linking what you do to your real purpose. So I talk about understanding who you are, why you do, and how you do it. So I think that would be the biggest learning for me.
I can associate with that. Good stuff. Well, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks,
Take care,
Simon.
and we'll catch up soon.
Cheers, mate. See you soon. Bye for now.